Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's panel session. My name is Ken Delaney, and I'm the Director of Industry and Innovation at the Freedom Systems Center at NC State. I wish that we could be having this panel in person, but naturally it's going to be virtual considering today's environment. I also wish that I was able to bring everybody together to our lab on Centennial Campus. We are a power electronics and power systems research center and do a lot of cool stuff with energy innovation in this particular field of energy and energy efficiency and renewable energy. So what we're going to do, instead of doing the lab tour, we have a brief video that we're going to show kind of announcing Energy Week and talking in general about some of the energy research here at NC State. And then we're going to hear some prepared remarks from our panelists with our moderator, Bill Nussey, kicking things off, and they'll each give a brief introduction to who they are. And then after that, we'll open it up for questions. Bill will ask some questions to the panelists. It'll be a moderated discussion. And then if you, as attendees, have questions, please put those in the Q&A box at the bottom. And we will get to as many of those as we have time for. So if we could roll the Energy Week video. Thank you.
I think what makes NC State a great place to learn about energy is the sheer number of faculty we have working in the energy space. So we have faculty conducting pioneering research in technical areas like energy modeling, life cycle assessment, and nuclear engineering. But what's impressed me the most is the number of faculty we have working in non-engineering areas in the energy space, working on climate change communication, energy justice, and energy policy.
NC State is a really unique place for energy research, and it's really the depth and breadth of that research. And the idea of the faculty is really to bridge the gap between the more fundamental, academically focused energy research and the on-the-ground decisions that decision makers need to make.
Energy is an integral part of sustainability at NC State, so there's constant cross-pollination of ideas and concepts.
So how do we go about that? We look for ways to produce the energy more efficiently. We produce about a third of the electricity needed on our campus for our uses. A third. We don't have to buy that from someone else, and so we can control the price of that, the time that we produce it. The amount of money that we spend on this product is well over $35 million a year. So anything we can do, from the end user to the producer to the people in the middle, to make sure that we do that as efficiently as possible is important.
Interdisciplinary collaboration and partnership only serves to bolster our sustainable solutions around energy.
The North Carolina Clean Energy Technology Center, they are focused on doing education, outreach, job training, and research around energy efficiency and renewable energy. And the Freedom Systems Center is at the forefront of developing an internet for energy. The vision is to develop renewable energy resources across the distribution network and then to be able to coordinate all of that in an intelligent fashion. The expertise across campus is enormous. So every time I've faced a problem in my own research, it's been very easy to reach out to other faculty, to staff who have expertise in an area that I don't, to bring them on board onto a project and to be able to complete the research objectives associated with that project.
It's a very cohesive environment for collaborations to happen because you can often talk to faculty about their research and bounce ideas off each other. And this helps you add layers to your research which you haven't thought of before. It makes NC State's energy portfolio much more holistic because we approach research problems and we achieve this transition to a decarbonized energy system from many different angles, both engineering and non-engineering.
The collaborative is really a means by which faculty and staff can communicate, share ideas, and collectively advance the research and teaching agenda for NC State. And I'd also mention that we also coordinate closely with the Student Energy Club.
The goal of the Student Energy Club was to really be a hub for students, faculty, and researchers on our campus and for collaborations to happen.
I think the students have a learning lab in front of them every day. And it's really on us as the administrators and faculty to make sure that they see it. They don't just walk by it, that we explain it to them, that we expose them to these ideas, because who knows what student walks in the door unaware but leaves fully aware, able to influence society somewhere else. That's really what the university is about.
The energy research that we do on campus doesn't just stay on campus, it goes out into the community.
So ultimately, it is our students that benefit from the experience of tackling real-world problems as they go out into the world.
It takes everybody's thoughts, not just in the facilities division, not just in the sustainability office, but everybody bringing their thoughts together so we can find solutions to the problems we face in energy consumption.
Because the courses and the opportunities are so diversified, I think we're training many different kinds of energy leaders that fulfill many different kinds of roles.
This is what's going on, and this is your part that you can play not only at NC State, but for years to come after you leave this institution.
Hello, I'm Bill Nussey, and I am the moderator of today's panel. I'm also a lifelong entrepreneur. I spent most of my career in software. In fact, I started my first company here on campus at North Carolina State when I graduated a few years later with a EE degree in 1987. I've been running and building software startups ever since then, had a few great exits in IPO, and sold my last company to IBM. And that's when I decided to shift my career towards clean energy. I'm now involved with two companies. One is called Solar Inventions, which is commercializing a breakthrough in silicon photovoltaics and bringing that across the world and improving the efficiency and features of solar cells and panels, hopefully across the world. I also spent some time on a media project, which includes a book that's coming out next year called Freeing Energy, and a podcast and a website by the same name. You know, it was a big move to shift from software into clean energy, and I did it for three reasons. The first was that the world needs it. Generations in the future will thank us for accelerating the shift to clean energy and hopefully impacting the planet a little less than we're on track to do today. There's also 1 billion people today that have no electricity at all. And the chance to use clean energy to deliver them some of the conveniences of life and help them climb what they call the economic energy ladder is really meaningful. And also, I guess the third reason is this is arguably the largest business opportunity in history, and I want to be a part of it. When people ask me what can they do to get into the industry, my first answer is it's an incredibly complicated industry. It really is important to learn it, to understand how it's different than other industries like software, for example, and how it's much more than just the engineering part. While that's critical, and a critical part as it transitions, but it's a business too. It's a business models, it operates globally. It's very exciting, but it's complicated, and understanding it first. There's a tremendous amount to be learned online. There's classes to be taken, and getting a job somewhere in the industry and learning the ropes is a fantastic place to start. Anyway, I'm looking forward to today's live dialogue, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, I'm Ryan Babai, co-founder and hardware development lead at Watch. Although we all wear many hats, effectively that means I'm in charge of the hardware side of the company, where we are currently developing a low-cost, secure system for energy system, performance data acquisition, and control. Our company was founded to solve the issue of observability in today's exploding commercial and industrial solar market, and consequently help these up-and-coming smaller solar developers expand and install as much solar as they possibly can. Today, there just aren't the tools to manage such a large, diverse portfolio of solar sites easily at all, and just too much time is consumed figuring out how much energy has been produced in order to do anything more extensive, like figure out how much energy should have been produced. I've always been interested in clean energy. Back in middle school, I bought some wholesale polycrystalline solar cells off of some random website and tried to make a little system out of them. It did not pan out. I think really what pushed me into the space was the film The Inconvenient Truth, where I really learned the urgency of the issues today and that we needed to change fast. If you're interested in renewables, I would say now is the time to get into this space in whatever way you think you can help the best. We've finally come to the realization as a society that the effects of all of the widespread industrialization of the past century have caught up to us. and the short-term gains are not sustainable for very much longer at all. I think startups like ours are beginning to come out of the woodwork and are inevitable because so many passionate people are coming together to find a solution to these problems, and there is an abundance of these problems. People are looking to invest in these companies as well. So if you have a good idea, regardless of what facet of sustainability it is, there is the potential to pursue it. So pursue it. As a shameless side plug there, Watch is looking to hire a software engineer in the next few weeks to push our platform forward. Reach out to us at team@watch.io if you're interested. And I just want to say I'm very excited and very grateful to be a part of this panel. So thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Chad Eckert. I'm a Senior VP at ERMCO, which is one of the largest distribution transformer manufacturers in North America. I founded a company called GridBridge, and GridBridge was focused on power electronics-based solutions for the electrical network. In 2017, ERMCO purchased GridBridge, and since then I've been leading the technology strategy and new solutions development for the company, and also lead the Advanced Technology Center here in Raleigh, North Carolina. I got involved in the clean energy industry because I saw an unmet need in the grid to accommodate distributed energy resources, things like solar, storage, and electric vehicles. My advice for those considering a career in clean energy, really think about what sort of contribution you'd like to make. It's a really large industry. You can get involved in areas such as solar, wind, electric vehicles. You can get involved in software, hardware, or services. You can be part of a manufacturer, a utility, or even a consulting organization. Most importantly, though, is if you see an unmet need and you're passionate about it, definitely go after that opportunity. Thanks, and I look forward to talking with you more in our session.
Hi, I'm Michael Chanin. I'm the CEO and founder of Cherry Street Energy. We're a power company. Started our business 5 years ago for the built environment of the future, which will incorporate renewable power on every structure that can support it. We're based in Atlanta, but we don't just want to be Georgia-based going from Atlanta to Augusta. We want to be able to go from Savannah to Seattle. The built environment of the future will incorporate renewable power on every structure that can support it. If you take nothing else, advice or otherwise from this, know just that. It is cost efficient and it is also necessary. Climate change and all of the other realities that you know too well cause us to have conversations just like this one to see if we can't get people like you excited to come work with companies like us. Our company is filled with dedicated workers who know that we can effectuate change. When I was in your chair, I had no idea what I wanted to be where I grew up. But I did know that I wanted to effectuate change, and I knew that when the time came, when we knew what the chair was and what that calling would be, that we could be there, and that's what our business has become. What does that mean? It means that for cities like Atlanta, counties like Fulton County or DeKalb County, universities like Emory University or your university, we want for these municipalities, universities, schools, and hospitals to incorporate our renewable power, that is solar panels that are improved by friends of mine like Bill Nussey, as well as battery storage and other technologies to help us. But we need designers, we need engineers, we need architects, we need marketing teams, and we need salespeople. There's a litany of roles and we need people like you, and so my ask is for you to stay in touch, stay connected, and stay involved. As we build this future infrastructure, which we all will need, and make it inevitable, we're going to need support. So I hope that you'll be in touch with us, with me, and with our team as we continue to improve our community and our society, as we continue to engage the stakeholders and leaders at your university, in your city, in your town, in your state, because as we continue to create this reimagined renewable energy economy, as you join us with these new collar jobs, we know that we can create equity, we can create equality, and we can create an environment and an ecosystem that supports the environment that we all will need. And so thanks for joining us. Thanks for giving us the time and the platform. And please be in touch. Thanks.
All right, can you guys hear me? All right. Well, this is going to be a really interesting conversation. Again, I'm Bill Nussey, wearing my Solar Inventions shirt here, trying to push the cutting edge of solar science and also get the good word out there. So I was excited when Ken and the NC State folks reached out to me and asked me to help put this together. And as I was working on this, I got to tell you, I don't think you're going to find a more diverse, more interesting group of um, backgrounds, engineering and political science and philosophy. This is just an amazing group of folks we've got assembled here today, all of whom are entrepreneurs through and through, all at very different stages of their careers. I take one end of it, and I think Ryan brings up the other. So if you are interested in clean energy, this is going to be one of the most diverse in terms of the types of energy and the ways in which entrepreneurs can participate that you're ever going to that I've ever seen put together. So I'm really excited to be a part of this today. And we're going to start off by asking each other a few questions, and then as we get questions from you guys, Ken will chime in and we'll answer some of your questions as well. But gentlemen, welcome today. I really appreciate you making some time to share your stories. I sent a few questions ahead of time, and I want to start with the second one. Each of the four of us are in a very different field of electricity, a very different way in which we're solving the world's energy problems. And so I would love it if we can maybe start with Chad, then Michael, then Ryan, and have each of you guys talk about the part of the electricity industry that you're in, and why you like it, why it's unique. And keep in mind that when most people say, hey, I want to be in renewable energy, or my friend's in renewable energy, or my friend's in electricity, or whatever, they don't realize just how many components there are and just how large this industry is. So help people understand, give them a roadmap on what your part does to the greater energy economy, so to speak. So Chad.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks much. Thanks much for the opportunity. So as I mentioned, we're a manufacturer, right? So we're on the hardware side of things. We're involved in software, but we're at a critical intersection of the utility getting electricity to the customer. And our solutions are based in power electronics with software. And so we're making a physical product, and we're putting it in the hands of utilities to solve lots of problems. So I like to look at it as, we're making the smart grid smarter. Or one could say making the smart grid actually smart. We have technology that does introduce electronics-based actuation. It is actually doing something to the power, which is needed. And it's needed because the legacy products, electromechanical devices. We look at things like line regulators, meters, things like that in the past were all electromechanical. So electronics can really do a lot more for the grid than anyone ever thought of. And so we're seeing the progression take place in the grid, and we're glad to be part of that. So this autonomous operation, this closed loop feedback is an important component as you have more and more distributed energy resources that are coming on to the grid, especially downstream of that substation.
So when I first met Chad, one of the times I mentioned, we went out to your offices before you guys were acquired, and you took me through all the things that you were making. And I remember thinking that, well, it's kind of, I'm a computer guy, so I was thinking it's kind of like computers. But once upon a time, computers used punch cards and vacuum tubes, right? And today, my new iPhone that's supposed to come on Friday has like 12 billion transistors in it, right? And so it's still computing, but what you guys are doing and what your career has done for the last many years is to go through this arc of very old technology and move it into the modern technology. And I think that's a really, on the surface, it may look the same if you aren't in the industry. And this is a great example of why understanding the value that your company's creating is so unique. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, we always say that we're moving the electrons, as you alluded to earlier, in a way that the bits of data have been moved in the past for organizations like the telecommunications industry, and so we're moving electricity, the electrons, in a more effective and efficient fashion, and at a critical spot where they can be moved to be able to make impact.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm going to hand the mic over to Michael, who I've also had the great pleasure of knowing for a few years, not quite as many. And one of the reasons that when you listen to Michael, one of the things you got to listen for is that He is, I think the term is a polymath. He's taking both the left and the right brain approach. He's bringing an incredible business experience to both a very engineering heavy business, which is building out the renewable infrastructure, but also the social side, as you heard him talk about jobs and new collar jobs. And he's blending this in a way that honestly, I talk to people all over the world, and I continue to find Michael's incredibly exciting approach to be unique. So Michael, tell us a little bit about your section of the electricity world.
It's rewarding because I've got no idea what Chad does for a living. I mean, I know technically, but like I studied English and history. I went to graduate school focused on human rights in East Africa, after which my father suggested I should get a job. And I went to work for a bank called Goldman Sachs. And in doing that, I've now had the good fortune of starting this business 5 years ago. And for a couple of years now, having what I would suggest personally are very in-depth discussions with someone who's become a good friend, but mentor, importantly for this discussion, in Bill Nussey. And if anyone who knows him would appreciate his candor in those discussions is so valuable, because you need mentorship like that, or I've always found it so important, because the candor and the feedback can be so unsettling. And so it's been years now, and maybe, a month ago that Bill says, Michael, I'll tell you, I still am not sure I understand what you do. Which is good. I think we're getting closer, and I hope that I can talk with everyone today about our business, which is a power company. And that's unsettling to people because they think they know what a power company is. And we always say we're the power company of the future, because we power today cities, businesses, institutions with renewable energy. But we're an entirely new type of power company made possible by this convergence, which I thought I was going to see, Ken, if you'll send that video, both to share with our team. It was really well done by the Wolfbite Video Services. And that's fantastic job last night they put together. But our business, I feel like, is well articulated by the value of the platform at NC State and a lot of interdisciplinary organizations like this one, because our power company is made possible by the convergence that has occurred at your institution, right? Because we are this convergence of technology, of the work that Chad has done. You'll hear in a second from someone else who's a vendor of ours and does incredible work. The technology, the energy storage, the banking, and construction, these all fuel our business and our passionate belief that renewable energy has the capacity to power our economies, our communities, and our world. Bill's point is the right point. At the beginning of this year, the accounting firm Ernst & Young put out a study that said in the next 5 years, $1.6 trillion will be spent in this sector in the universe. I have no idea how much money that is. It seems like a ton. And they say that's as much as ever has been spent in a sector in 5 years in history. And then about 3 months later, my former firm, or the firm that I was formerly worked for, said that is $16 trillion. They just moved the decimal. And I laughed and I forwarded it to our accounting firm and said, that is the difference between an accountant and an investment. Because no one knows. It's massive and it's happening. And we are the power company that is going to own, operate, maintain, and with time improve all of this. Today, we have to, one of the lessons we'll talk about and challenges is how do you get started? What is the first thing you do? So our first step was find some addressable market and show that your vision for this market is repeatable and scalable. And then we can address all sorts of other stuff. We're a tiny business today that has huge vision for aspiration. Vision is me and my backstrokes of my own Kool-Aid. We have aspirations and we hope that the vision is correct. But it's through partnership. And that's why I really appreciate, Bill, you including us in this discussion. Everybody does something more complicated than what we do. We're just the partner that tries to piece everyone together. We want to take Bill Nussey's innovation. We want to take Ryan's communication platform and visualizations. We want to take what Chad does with dispatchable power and where that's going in those technologies. And we want to put that on our platform to then sell electricity in this reimagined renewable energy economy, because we know that it can be a force for good. And we know that if we have the right partnerships going into this, that perhaps we then can reimagine a system that is better set up than the one that we are replacing.
Michael, I think that for folks that are new to the electricity world, one thing that they don't always appreciate is that everywhere in the United States and most of the world, electricity is an absolute monopoly. It's one of the tightest, strictest monopoly businesses that exists in the world today. And so it is illegal it's actively illegal to sell electricity in many situations in the region. And what's so cool about your business is that there are some carve outs. If a company puts solar on their roof, they are, or you put solar on a rooftop, you're able to sell the electricity from that to the person who's underneath your panels. And all the vision and entrepreneur and aspiration that you bring to it, you have found a way to work around the monopoly laws. And what you're proving, and people like you across the world are proving, is that you don't have to rely strictly on these sort of fixed profits, government mandated monopolies. While we still need them, they're critically important. They are not the only way we can do electricity today. And you guys are proving that out. And you're bringing a degree of innovation, speed, and testing that the utilities simply can't do because they're large and they're government controlled. And so I think this is the center. And I have to just correct you on one thing you said that was incorrect, which is that your business is incredibly complicated. It just doesn't involve circuit diagrams and phase alignment. It involves sitting down with politicians and with people who say, especially here in the South, we're like, well, I don't know about this green energy thing, and talking to public utility commissioners. And that's what's so awesome about the electricity and the clean energy industry is whatever angle you come at it, right? You don't have to be an electrical engineer. It helps, but you don't have to be in order to make a big difference. So thank you for that. We're going to come back to you on the challenges. So Ryan, you're on mute. Tell us a little bit about the sector that you live in. And also, I think because you're very recently graduated from another university who will go unnamed, downtown Atlanta here. I'm just kidding. We will sort of how you decided to become an entrepreneur and what, sort of what led you to this and what you learned about early on. We'll get to that later, but so tell us what you guys do. I'll start with that. Sorry.
Yeah. So again, super excited to be a part of this panel. Thank you again. So our side of the business, sorry if there's a bit of an echo in here. But so our company basically focuses on observability into these solar systems. So, Michael can attest to this a huge amount, but there's a big problem that after talking to many people, we have discovered is rampant in the industry, which is that it's very difficult to know how your systems are performing, which seems crazy because again, computers, electronics have existed now for a long time and power so many different industries. And these kinds of tools to say, these IoT devices and all these things exist to tell you, oh, I can check the water pressure here. I can check, how much power is flowing through this point. But in the solar industry, that because it's so new, especially the commercial industrial market, it's so new, especially in the past few years, and it's exploding such that the tools to understand how your system is performing and how to improve the performance just don't really exist. So we kind of are excited because we're getting into it at this really volatile time where everything is expanding and companies like Cherry Street are coming out and really trying to grow their businesses right now and install solar everywhere, which is, I'm very excited about that. But basically, we try to take the sort of existing data that is being produced by these power electronics that are out there, that all these great companies are producing a lot of amazing power electronics, super high efficiency inverters, optimizers, MPPTs, but they're not really taking advantage of all of that data. It exists, and you can learn so much from that data. You can say, this inverter is running too hot, maybe limit the power, and you can extend its lifespan by X percentage, or you can detect when an inverter is going to fail with 1 or 2 weeks out and say, okay, I should order a new inverter, schedule some maintenance time, go replace it. That way it's not off for 2 weeks. That way it's down for a couple of hours while it's just being replaced, and then we can refurbish it. So that's sort of where we're at. That's sort of our end vision. Right now, we're focusing on the observability aspect, which is the biggest part. Getting the data necessary is actually a really hard problem. But once that's solved, you can layer things on top of that, like intelligence and alerting and rules like that, that'll help people essentially manage more systems and spend less time trying to figure out how much energy they should have been producing and install more solar, which is the key, I think.
That's a great overview. And a lot of the folks listening in today are probably have computer science and electrical engineering backgrounds. And I think one of the points that I want to make sure that they understand is that the degree, and you said it, but I want to echo it, that the lack of tools in this industry, in the solar, particularly the solar industry, are just staggering. I'm old enough to remember back when websites first came up, and for years you had no idea who was visiting the website. Now, of course, Google Analytics and these other tools, which are free, are abundant. But for those of you new to the business world, billion-dollar Titanic companies were born out of just making sense of who was visiting your website. And so Ryan and his company is creating that same visibility into an industry that's obviously a technical industry, but shockingly lacking in data science. And the last thing I want to make sure that people understand about Watch is that electricity is difficult because it's not like it's just you store a record of information when a kilowatt hour goes by. Electricity is continuous. It kind of defies the record level storage that you see in a lot of other things, like say financial transactions or e-commerce or something. And so what Ryan and his team have done has been to build an insanely scalable database and to wet it over the cloud to a incredibly inexpensive piece of hardware. So there are other companies trying this, but their technology is 5-10 years old and will probably end up costing 10 to 25 times more than what Ryan and his team have built. And so they're basically, like web analytics started out, is incredibly expensive and very few companies could afford it. Really imaginative, creative companies made it affordable for everybody. So I know every site everywhere has got web analytics, but you need to reinvent the underlying technology, and it's really impressive to me. So I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. The degree of science, computer science, and hardware science that Ryan and the team have put together, and so I think that what you're seeing is sort of a new breed of entrepreneur that has the perspective born of where Google and these companies are already mature, and bringing that kind of expectation for scalability and cost to an industry that's still running largely on 10-year-old technology. So I love what you guys are doing, and appreciate you being a part of this today.
Bill, can I just say, in elevating that, I mean, this is a guy that hand soldered, right, essentially in his basement, a piece of hardware for a solution that didn't exist in a multi-billion-dollar industry. I mean, he had just graduated from some Georgia-based land grant school, and apparently with some advanced sophistication, but like in a garage invented something with a soldering iron and a kid that could program and code pretty well, to build, I've learned what sharding is and any number of other things from these folks, because we don't study that with a liberal arts background, or at least not that that's what it means. And in any event, when they do this, he's now built a tool that's going to change fundamentally how anyone that looks at distributed generation expects to receive that. And I just think anyone that worries about an inaccessibility of a marketplace, Ryan has proved that it's not true. I mean, it just, when you first asked me about it and it's like, this really doesn't exist. It's like, yeah, it's not there. Someone has to physically build it. And so he built it. It's awesome.
Yeah, so just a quick nerd digression, Ryan. So I think a lot of the folks on this call have computer science and engineering background. So give us the 60-second sort of nerd specs on the hardware that you've built, because as I've understood it, it's pretty staggering. You're doing it for a 10th or 30th of the cost of anything else in the market today.
Yeah. So we actually have looked at a lot of different products that exist out on the market, and a lot of these data loggers, they're essentially data loggers. They're Linux machines that are very complicated and cost, $1,000, $1,500. What we want to do is basically take a much simpler bare metal microcontroller and use that as the core. That one brings the cost down and also reduces or increases reliability, in that you don't have a complicated operating system running on it. You have a very simple stack, just connects to the internet, connects to different serial interfaces. We spend a lot of time optimizing, which types of serial interfaces that we want to have on it in order to, minimize the additional costs that we need. So, it has a couple of RS-45s, it has Wi-Fi for certain systems, has Bluetooth for configuration. You can terminate it automatically via software, which is kind of cool. Reduces the amount of wiring required, and then can connect to the internet via Ethernet. So a lot of work was done to sort of optimize what interfaces it has based on where it's going to be. and also be sort of general enough that it can be expanded to other industries as well. But yeah, we spend a lot of time optimizing the cost to get it, around $50 for the bill of materials. And then total assembly costs, we're hoping to be, $100 to $200 range. That way, these can go wherever they can. We'll basically just include it as a part of the service, like your cable company, and you don't really have to worry about the hardware. You don't have to pay $10,000 up front to get a DAS enclosure or that has a bunch of things that you don't need in it, just specifically what you need to get the data to the platform, and that's effectively it. And we also invested a decent amount of time into adding a secure element to it for private key infrastructure and things like that. So it's also very secure because we want to get into controls later on. So having it be secure is very important so that people can't take control of your system, obviously. But yeah.
So that's some pretty cool software hardware you guys have put together, and I love the fact that the box you're describing can plug into without electrical changes into most electrical gear today. It's just a software configuration, which is again, I think, why you guys are off to a great start. So thank you for that short nerd moment. I hope everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. Well, let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurism, which is what I've spent my whole career. As a venture capitalist, I've started several companies, grown them large, exited them IPOs. I've had a whole range of entrepreneurial journeys, and I'm grateful for all the fantastic people I've had a chance to work with and learn from along the way. But each of us has come at our entrepreneurial journey in a little different way. And so I'll give you my brief story, and because it's relevant to the audience, and then we'll start with Chad and Michael and Ryan. Tell us how you guys decided to become entrepreneurs and what you learned, what you would do. My favorite question is, what you'd go back and tell yourself if you knew then what you knew, if you could know then what you knew now. So I started my first serious company in high school at Enloe High School in Raleigh, and then went to NC State and started a software company in my dorm room. It's Sullivan Dorm, 202C Sullivan Dorm, and we had a software. Go Sullivan Dorm, right? But so we had a software company running out of there, and we ended up growing it to a global software company back when that was pretty unique in the late 80s and early 90s. And I did it, because, as my wife says, I'm pretty much unemployable. So I had to go basically do something on my own because I couldn't really stand working for somebody. But long before I married her, I was doing this, and my father told, it's not a story I tell widely, but my father told me that I should never be an entrepreneur because I didn't have the tenacity. He loved me and he thought I'd be a fine psychologist. But it turns out being a psychologist is a phenomenal first order skill for being a CEO or an executive, seriously. But I got into it because whenever I tried to play by the rules of the game, I always felt like I'm not hyper competitive, but I like chess, I like strategy, and I like thinking about how to win. And the rules were just so constraining, and the opportunities you couldn't achieve these big opportunities by playing within the set side rules for kids my age. And so I met some other people, and as I've advised accountants, entrepreneurs, the biggest reason to start a company is you have a group of people, typically, hopefully not your best friends, but people that that you trust and respect, and together you can bring something together that's far greater than the sum of your combined skills. And some of the greatest moments of the greatest moments of my professional life are the esprit de corps, the camaraderie that happens when you a group of people that have just killed yourself for a year or two, and then something comes together, and there's no greater sense of reward. And by the way, when the crap hits the fan and everything's in the ditch and you don't think you're going to survive, that same group of people that you arm in arm, you say, we're going to get through this. And sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But that camaraderie for me is by far the greatest joy. And it was the initial motivation for me personally, and to continue my entire career to be an entrepreneur. Although I did take a couple of years at IBM and loved working there, learned a ton, but ultimately decided to try the entrepreneur thing again. Well, I'll let you know that's going in a few years. So Chad, tell us, how did you become an entrepreneur? You started that company just outside of NC State, as I recall.
That's right. Yeah, we spun GridBridge out of Freedom Systems Center, and so we did that in late 2011, early 2012. And so, again, we worked in in a standalone environment for probably about 5 years, and then were acquired by Armco. And so
I was smiling, Bill, during some of your comments because, I think you phrased it well. I came from industry. I had a career in industry, some of the large industrial manufacturers of equipment. And, I found myself having a hard time playing in the rules as well, playing by the rules as well. And so, I always had a passion to venture out and do something independently. It's just that, as people say, the timing isn't always perfect, right? And so what I had to do is trudge forward and say, never is going to be the right timing. It's never going to be the perfect scenario. I remember, when I, broke away from industry and jumped into being essentially employee number one at the company. I just recently married, talking of kids, and had a mortgage, needed health insurance, all these things, right? And I look back at the time, and my wife just said, "Hey, you're unhappy with what you're doing. Just go and spend some time." So I remember I negotiated for 6 months, and at 6 months I said, "Hey, let's see if I get this started, get it going." 6 months I was back at the table negotiating for 12. At 12 months, I negotiated for about 5 years. And so I said, "Hey, this is going well. We're making progress." And, there's a history for GridBridge and what we did. We had gotten certainly backing from private investors, but also we were successful with bringing in non-dilutive capital from SBIR grants and numerous other agencies, 5 federal agencies overall. So every time I came back to the table, it was like, "Hey, things are getting a little better. I see, see this working out." And so, lessons learned. I had a great support system. I was still an entrepreneur when I have twins, so when my twins were born, and still in the uncertainty environment. Find out that we were having one child, and let alone 2 at the same time. And so, there's lots of crazy times that you'll encounter, but have that support system. The other thing I say is, stay positive. There's the roller coaster throughout the day, and there's plenty of scenarios where we started the day with a really good scenario. That progressed to a not so good scenario, and then we were back at the end of the day with a really good scenario. And so those dips and rises can all happen in the same day, and it's just important to stay positive and look at the end game. I always looked at in my quote unquote contract with my wife and said, I'm working on this for 5 years, maybe 10 years. We'll see. I also remember not trying to force situations. I think it's important. A lot of times you get, strong-minded folks, entrepreneurial passion, and you're like, "I'm going to make this work no matter what." Well, you can do that for the business, but I remember a lot of partnerships that we worked on, and I just had to step back and say, if this doesn't come together, something else is going to take its place. And so that was important for me to realize. And then the last day, the reason I stick with it is every day's material. I love it. Every day, we talk about the ups and downs, but I walk away from this business knowing that I made an impact at the end of the day. And I can't say I had the same scenario inside of the large companies where I worked for well over a decade.
Well, thanks for that, man. One thing that people that aren't in the industry don't realize is that unlike almost any other kind of startup you might do, the government provides a tremendous and wide-ranging set of funding, whether it's more science-based or my startup here has won almost $1 million from the U.S. government as part of a solar prize competition, which they haven't done in the past. And Orion's company is also in that competition. And there's just so much money available that it's one of the reasons that venture capital isn't as active in the space, because for entrepreneurs, there are so many it's not easy to get, right? It's a lot of bureaucracy sometimes, but there's a lot of money available. And depending on how things go out in the United States in the next couple of years, there's a good chance that whatever money is available will be 10 times more. So it's a good time to think about getting into the space. But so Michael, tell us about your entrepreneurial journey.
Answer is going to be so I love diversity is great for a lot of different reasons. Our team was talking diversity of thought earlier today. So when you said the question, Bill, my mind first went to the etymology of the loan word. right? So entrepreneur comes from French. We stole it from them, I think, in like the 16th century. Um, I'm from South Georgia, so I have to stop saying anything as it relates to French because our people don't speak that language very well. But from what I understand of the etymology in French, an entrepreneur just means a individual that gets in between two things. Um, and I view that very literally for me. Your entrepreneurial journey is more traditional, perhaps, than mine, because mine was pretty corporate most of the way through. Mine was my personal mission, I guess, is I thought you saw in the video. I always felt, and I think a lot of us do sometimes, the joy of doing things that are greater or outside of ourselves. And I always thought that I maintained or had that capability, the capacity to effectuate change past, just who I was. And there weren't a lot of days that I went to the office at a bank, pumping the fist saying I created liquidity in the capital markets. I made it a better place. I did what I did, and I was honest with myself about it to make as much money as possible. But this was for the AP Modern European History reason. If it's like anybody that prepared well, as most of the people that went to NC State likely did, for their AP exams. AP Modern European, you probably got a 4 or 5 if you remembered that land equals money equals power. And then whatever the question is, right, just adopt your answer to that. And so that basically was the story of modern European history as I understood it. And so I knew if I wanted to effectuate change, we weren't going to get land anymore because that sort of had passed. Most people had gobbled it up. The greatest opportunity for wealth accumulation in society in the 21st century is going to be in power, period. Power equals money equals power. And if you wanted to effectuate change, that's what I needed to do.
So you mean electric power?
Yeah.
Electric power.
Electric power.
Okay, I just want to make sure you're talking about electric power. Good. All right.
Oh yeah, 100%. Fuel's gone. We're not going to use it predominantly because it costs too much. Also because of global warming. It's just practically that's not why the transition was going to happen. And I wanted to make it a better place. I thought that I could. And so then it was become an entrepreneur by getting in between the people that are going to do that. And that's what our business does. We are a platform. You'll also ask the challenges question. So I'll hold off on what the challenges are for us in that entrepreneurial journey. But I was sitting September 18th, 2015, at lunch with a lawyer who said, "Did you know the law changed in Georgia to allow for a third party, a private company to sell electricity?" And Bill, your point's right. I want to ask you, and here's a perfect forum. I always say to people that electricity markets are the second most regulated, following healthcare and banking to be the third. So of the major changes that are coming, the regulatory environment for energy, and it's largely because we view access to it as one of the greatest drivers of economic development and almost as a right, if healthcare is a right.
I think regulation is a broad term, and we don't need to dissect it too much today. But I would tell you that I think healthcare and financial markets actually allow for a lot of entrepreneurism. And one of the limitations of electricity is that the way in which it's priced is hardwired, whereas in the banking and healthcare, you can invent all new ways to sell it. All new products can be packed. So I'd actually argue there's only 2 industries that are more tightly regulated than electricity, and one is gambling and one is alcohol. Okay. Just saying, it's true. Actually, I think that those vices.
Yeah. So we're in the top 3 anyway. However we slice it, and so it was going to be a challenge. And so I felt like that was a place where historically I'd been personally successful. It was understanding large systems. I thought that I could effectuate change. I thought that my background uniquely positioned me to be a participant in that discussion. And then the last piece is, since I got my first job, so I wanted to stay and get a PhD. My father suggested I needed to do something, so I took a shotgun approach, and the job at the bank was the best offer that I got. And I sat there every day and tried to learn, to do work, and to wait for something to come across that fit the basic parameters I set for myself when I graduated grad school. Was a threefold framework. One, I knew that to continue to earn, we knew that, I had to work. And if you had to work, I wanted to optimize for doing as well as I could based off of a financial return, because I was working for financial return. So I calculated personally what I wanted to make every year and what that needed to grow to. The second was that I knew long term I wanted to work for myself, not because of some of Bill's reasons. I think that I'm a good worker and learner from other people, but I knew that if I wanted to control my own outcome of effectuating change in the community, that was the way that I would have to do it. So I knew my earning curve that I wanted to hit. I knew ultimately I wanted to work for myself. And finally, I wanted to get home. It was like I had gotten a job offer once to essentially trade a large portfolio for someone, but I'd be sitting in Singapore. And it was like, well, it's a three-legged stool, and sometimes it's hard to get all three legs, but I really wanted to. And so when I was at lunch that day, to me, I knew that I could chase this and that it would check all three boxes for what I wanted to do. And so that to me was really what unleashed me to find such great success. And I should also note for everybody else, I kept my day job for the first 3 years of starting the business. So fixed costs are real. It's like I always, my wife got me a flea market painting that still hangs in my office. College is a great experience for 1,000 reasons, but I was always upset when you'd hear people and be like, that was the best 4 years of my life. And this is good to talking to NC State people because y'all have never been big celebrators of recent high school graduates that run into each other on purpose. It's like of people that go to NC State. I mean, maybe your basketball team, but it's rare from what I understand of NC State that they've said, I went there for our football program, right? Like I'm from South Georgia where people go to places on purpose based off of how well other peers of theirs run into each other. And to me, it never made much sense. But I knew that my focus needed to be trying to work with our community to make it better, and that this was that opportunity to do so.
Thank you, Michael. So Ryan, let's wrap up with your thoughts on how you decided. As I understand your story, you had a lot of very interesting opportunities in the large Silicon Valley world, and so you decided to do this. Love to hear how you made that decision and what you've learned, and then hopefully we'll have about 3 or 4 minutes left at the very end so we can answer one or two of the questions that have come through.
Yeah. So I guess very similar to everyone else, where I kind of have that weird feeling of working for someone else, and where I want to sort of define my own path and what I want to work on. And sort of since a little kid, I've always sort of wanted to be an entrepreneur. I had a fake company with my friend where we'd make like electronics. I don't know, but that was fun. I thought it was cool taking things apart and trying to sell them, whatever. But throughout my experience more through college, so I started a lab at UGA called helped start a lab at UGA called the Small Sat Research Lab. And sort of through that, I met a lot of entrepreneurial folks. We had a startup for a short period of time making cheaper remote operated telescopes that we were 3D printing. That kind of fell to the wayside for the actual satellites. But the lab is still kicking, and I think they just launched their first satellite last week. And then I went to Georgia Tech, and there I joined the solar racing team, and sort of that being on the leadership there and being able to sort of drive what the team was building, and like sort of see people learn and learn so much from that. When I worked at sort of these larger companies, I didn't get that sort of feeling that I got while working on those other things. And I thought, maybe I could satisfy that itch through doing a startup. And when it came time to decide what I wanted to do, which was go work for my dream company since the beginning of high school, it was a super tough decision. But I thought for making myself feel like I was contributing to a greater good. I mean, I would have been there as well, but I felt a lot better, in the renewable energy industry, and being able to help in any way I can to move it forward and sort of define my path while doing it. I thought that was a worthwhile change, I guess.
Well, thank you. I'm excited for you guys and can't wait to see where you take this vision of yours. So we have a couple of questions, and we're going to try to end a minute or two before schedule. One of the questions is some of the folks who are on the call today don't have the backgrounds in mechanical or electrical engineering, and how would we suggest that they get into the industry? And obviously, as a young person, it's easier if you've got a very specifically defined skill function. But the great news, I'll just answer first. The great news is this is not an incredibly mature industry. And your ability to come up to speed on your own is often more than enough to be relevant to the companies that are hiring. And so, especially if you're earlier at the university and you're not about to graduate, you can join the clubs. You can do internships. Ryan, you did some great internships, which I did some internships, exposed you to a lot of great stuff while you're in school. And I like to say you learn the nouns and the verbs of an industry. So if you are at a university, you are at one of the all of you are at university, you are at one of the very, very best places that you can learn the basics of an industry without having to commit and jump in 100%. So I think now is a great time, and the clubs and the internships and the speakers who come on campus are all great resources. Folks, what else can you add to that?
I mean, I'll say something real quick. I come from a technical background, but I will say that the industry is large, right? As I mentioned in the opening video, there's plenty of services and business models. The end all isn't on the electrical and mechanical, and so keep in mind that there's a lot of models, and I think Michael probably can talk to that as well a little bit more. So my message: big industry, lots of opportunities in different areas.
Yeah, I totally agree with Chad. And I noted the question came from an EE. We just hired, I think proper hired, not even internship hired, a sophomore at Georgia Tech that has capacity nights and weekends. And we have need for EEs that have CAD background that can do the layout on the DC side of a solar array. Because as you all know better than me, folks going through oftentimes when studying for EE go to digital rather than analog. And even those that go to analog typically go their audio files that are doing power design for the music industry. So no, there's just from the electrical to the mechanical to all of the soft skills. Our most common hire right now, candidly, is what, for using a football metaphor, would be an athlete on the draft board. We are looking for smart kids that can work hard, and we'll teach you the rest because it doesn't exist yet.
All right. Any other thoughts on that? All right, we have one last question. Let's see, where was that? I think we had a question about Michael. Are you doing? When you say you are a utility, are you like Southern Company? Are you a giant utility? Are you doing giant utility projects, or can you scope maybe what you do a bit better?
Yeah, of course. So when and I see Joseph's question on are we utility scale, and Ken put some of our response back. Typically, no. Over my shoulder, I mean, we own projects like that one, and Georgia Power is our customer, but typically today, we sell directly to off-takers, which is our parlance for the final consumer of that electricity. In the electricity market, there are 3 tiers, perhaps, of customers. There are residential customers and homes, commercial and industrial that Ryan speaks to. That's municipalities or corporations. And lastly, there's the utility scale market. Utility scale typically is the wholesale market, and we are the retail market. We sell directly. Some slight nuance, but we would like to sell electricity to any of the purchasers out there. We view ourselves ultimately as being a power company like the Southern Company. We just
cooler.
Yeah, they can't
build
markets that aren't in the South.
Well, you're at the end of our time today. Really appreciate having a chance to talk to you guys and to hopefully have a good conversation with some of the folks that were listening in. Ken, thanks for helping put this together. And if they have questions, can they reach out to you, Ken, to field them back to us?
Yep, that's perfectly fine. And you guys can find my contact information on the Freedom website. But thank you again, Bill, for hosting this and Thanks, Chad, Michael, and Brian. You guys did a great job. Really appreciate all your insights.
All right. Go clean energy, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.